Kevin Hunter with Dave Ford here on the Business Forum Show, and we're going to talk about the coaching process that the 12 business owners who are part of the 252% Profit Improvement Club over the last 12 months, what they went through in getting to where they're at today. So let's start a little bit about the initial meeting that takes place between yourself, Dave, and one of these clients. Let's talk about that initial planning meeting.
Yeah, sure. Whenever I start working with somebody, the first thing that we have to do is figure out what do they want to accomplish and what really is going on in their business. We'll have an initial meeting, typically where I'll start pointing out, okay, you need to have this in place, you need to have this in place. We'll start talking about some ideas. Then once they decide to get started, we sit down and we really go through, okay, what are the goals? What are the things that you want to accomplish over the next 3 years, the next year? So based on that, what do we need to have in place over the first 90 days?
Sure.
And we go through and we figure out what are the top 3 to 5 goals that need to be accomplished, and then we step those out. What's going to happen each week over the next 3 months to make sure that stuff gets done.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious in the whole process of this, because when I've had conversations with business owners in the past, sometimes they'll tell you the things that they think are really important to get done.
Yep.
But they aren't necessarily things that help the business per se. You run
Correct.
into that, and what do you do
Well,
to give them feedback?
Normally what we'll do is I'll try to, okay, so you want to put that in place. Okay, so I know that might not really be, that's something they want done, but on the larger scale of things, it doesn't move the business forward. But so they'll talk about I'd like to get this marketing thing done, or this little marketing piece. It might help the business a little bit, but he doesn't have a marketing plan at all.
Right.
So, okay, so let's put together a marketing plan, and we'll put that into it, and then we'll figure out what are the other 4, 5, 6 strategies that you're going to use to bring your marketing in place. So I'll take a look at it, and usually I can take whatever goal that is and translate it back to there's something specific that needs to be done in the business that will further the business going forward.
Sure. So this takes us to some of the ongoing pieces here, and I'll just lay these out real quick for our benefit of our listening audience, and then we can go back into these each in a little bit of detail. But following your initial planning meeting, you go over budget and cash flow for the organization. Then after that, there's some conversation about measurables. Is there actually the opportunity to accomplish what the business owner is looking for based on what you're seeing there? Then you have some ongoing classes for education. And with time here, we'll also visit about identifying the ideal client in the business and what their unique selling proposition is.
Yep.
So, and the other thing that I want to mention about this whole piece, and that's probably the most important thing out of all of this, is they have a sounding board. Somebody like yourself that has worked with countless businesses through this whole piece, they have somebody they can actually call and say, what do I do? Or how do I, at any step of this whole piece? And that's something that's missing from any business owner's toolbox, so to speak, for most of them, because they can't just walk across the street and talk to their business buddy over there and say, hey, what do I do? Because they feel stupid. And they can't talk to most of their family and friends. And for many of them, even if it's business owner, male or female, going home and visiting with your spouse doesn't necessarily generate what you're looking for either.
Right.
So the big thing is they have an expert sounding board through all of these steps to help make this stuff happen. So let's visit about the first real step of this, which is budget and cash flow.
Well, to start with on this one, I don't think I'll say less than 10% of the people I've worked with, one of their first goals for when we first started working together was to have a budget or cash flow.
Less than 10%.
Yeah, less than 10%, because they don't understand a budget. They don't understand cash flow forecasts. They don't typically, most business owners don't understand the numbers well enough. So they kind of try to avoid it. And what their goal will be, well, I'd like to pay myself. So that's not a goal to put a budget together. That's a goal I want to pay myself. Well, okay, so in order to do that, we need to figure out, yes, I want you to pay yourself. I want you to pay yourself like right away. Or you need to upgrade your vehicles, or these different expenses. Well, we put together a budget in place so we know what your break even is based off of that, how many sales you have to have, what your gross profit is, and then you can figure out based on all of that, here's what you can then spend your money on. Here's where you need to grow to. Adding this employee, because somebody, well, I need to add an employee. Okay, so what's your return on investment? Well, let's see what the budget's going to tell us, because the budget will tell you amazing things once it's set up and once it's put together. And the cash flow forecast. Well, I never have any money at the beginning of the month. Why not? I don't know. Well, let's take a look. We'll look at the cash flow forecast, and when is the money going out? When is the money coming in? And you find out, in a lot of cases, there's accounts receivable that's sitting out there that they're not spending that much time, getting their accounts receivable in, or, well, I'm only invoicing once a month. Well, why are you doing that? Well, just because it's easy. Well, okay. So you're invoicing once a month. So somebody that buys from you, say, on the 5th, doesn't give a net 30. Now they have a net 60 because you've given them a net 30. You've given them 30 days to pay their bill without sending them an invoice. Then you're going to send them an invoice and give them 30 more days to pay their bill. So you want to improve your cash flow, just simply invoice twice a month, or weekly.
And I've seen many of the systems that have, with a little bit of adaptation, they've been able to invoice them when the transaction
absolutely
is done.
Or you can invoice real time. So it's taking a look at what's happening with the cash flow and how can we improve it. I'll have clients that know that I need to do $9,000 in revenue this week. Okay, so how are you going to do that? I mean, that's based on the cash flow they know, or they'll look at the cash flow forecast. I got payroll coming out next week, or I got this bill and this bill. I need to make sure I'm at $8,500 this week. Okay, what are you at so far? Well, I'm at 4. Okay, so how are you going to do the next 4.5? And so it becomes a game of understanding when the money's coming in and knowing that you have enough money to pay the bills and knowing that you have enough money to give yourself a raise or employees a raise or buy the new vehicle or, hire a new employee. And understanding that if I'm going to hire a new employee, how much more revenue then should I be producing because I hired that employee? What's my return on investment? So most clients, when we first start working with us, they don't come and say, well, I want to have a budget and a cash flow forecast, because they don't really understand what those two things will do for you. But they'll come to us and one of the first goals might be, I need to replace some vehicles, or I haven't paid myself in a while, or I haven't given my staff a raise, or, it seems like I never have any money at the beginning of the month, or I never have any money. So we'll tie that into a budget and a cash flow forecast. Those are the two most important things. One, so the business owner understands the health of the business, but two, also so that while I'm working with them, I can show them some of the results of what's been happening. I can show them the return on investment because they're increasing their revenue, they're increasing their gross profit, they're increasing their net profit. They've now got cash flow to pay all their bills. That's a huge piece of it.
I'm really mystified sometimes when you talk about the number of business people who don't have a budget, who don't have a cash flow forecast. And when they talk about the top 2 or 3 things that's important in their business, this generally isn't, you mentioned 10% of the clients will actually say this is a priority for themselves. And maybe this isn't a really good analogy, but when you think about a weatherman and he puts out a weather report, if you looked at this report all the time and you got really upset that it was just all over the place and never seemed to be what the weather actually was, and you called the station to complain and the guy just said, well, it was just a gut feeling I had. I mean, I just thought it probably would rain tomorrow, so I said rain. Or it felt like it was going to be sunny for 3 days, so I just said so.
Right.
And you're going, wait, you don't have any radar? You don't have any information that's actually telling you what the weather might be and making your best guess based off information?
Right.
You're just guessing? And we would think that would be ridiculous. But at the same token, a majority of business people are running their businesses and making a guess on what the weather is.
Correct. And it really is primarily because they don't understand the numbers, they don't understand the budgets, and if they've talked to a bookkeeper, they've talked to an accountant, they've talked to a CPA, they've talked to somebody about it, and they feel stupid. You're talking way over my head. I don't understand. I might as well be sitting in science class and you're teaching chemistry and I have no idea what you're talking about. So that's what one of the first things we have to do is simplify it. We put together things in a very simple manner so that you can understand, and typically we'll modify it so it works for you. We've got one client, we started working with her, year and a half ago, and she had 2 primary problems. She had a silent business partner that wasn't involved in the business but was still half owner, and she hadn't paid herself in 2 years. Well, we were having a little celebration on Thursday last week because she had just come from signing the purchase agreement, buying her silent business partner out. She now is 100% owner, and she has been paying herself every month since she started working with us. And now her business is at a point where she's looking at expanding, buying a new building. And one of the biggest issues, she hated looking at the numbers. She didn't want to look at the numbers. She didn't understand her cash flow. She didn't understand any of it. She didn't want to spend any time looking at it. We spent a lot of time getting her books straightened out getting a nice budget in place, cash flow forecast in place. She's excited about doing her numbers every month because now she knows what they mean. She knows what they mean to her business, and she knows what it means to her future. So that's something now that really motivates her because she understands it, and we helped teach her how to do it, and then kind of tailored it towards something that will really work for her instead of just saying, "Here's your numbers," and accountants speak by P&Ls, and that's all they know.
That's exactly right. And the interesting thing out of there's actually some health benefits that come out of
absolutely.
understanding those numbers, because when you think about the amount of stress a business owner feels by just wondering what's coming and not knowing, this whole thing about being afraid of the numbers, it actually gives you information to work with, and whether it's good or bad, you actually know what to do to fix the problem. Kevin Hunter with Dave Ford here on the Business Forum Show, chatting about coaching in business. We'll be right back. Don't go away.